My boyfriend went to a concert with a girl he used to sleep with, hid her name from me, blew up when I said I felt uncomfortable, left the show early, and is now calling me controlling and questioning if we're even compatible. My boyfriend, 30 male, and I, 30 female, have been dating for about 8 months now, and we're actually getting ready to move in together. On so many levels, he's a wonderful partner, thoughtful, funny, affectionate, and we have an amazing time when things are good. But like any relationship, we've had our issues, and the biggest one for me has been communication and trust. He has this tendency to assume I'm attacking him whenever I bring something up that's bothering me, even if I'm just trying to express how I feel. I'm not a yeller, I don't name call. I really do try to frame things as I feel statements. But sometimes, no matter how I say it, he hears it as criticism. It turns small conversations into bigger fights than they need to be, and I've been trying to work with him on that because I believe in us. The other layer to this is trust. A few months back, I caught him several times liking and following provocative pictures of women in our city, women who don't follow him back and, from what I could tell, don't actually know him. To me, that crossed a boundary. I know some people think it's no big deal, but for me it felt disrespectful, especially because these weren't just random influencers, they were local women he could actually run into. At first, he didn't understand why it bothered me. He brushed it off as just Instagram, but I had to catch him doing it 3 separate times before it really sank in that this wasn't just me being insecure, it was a boundary of mine that he kept ignoring. To his credit, after the 3rd time, he got it. He hasn't done it since, and he's been very focused on earning my trust back. And honestly, I feel like we're almost there. Most of the time, I do trust him again. But because that wound is still fairly fresh, it was only about 3 months ago, little things sometimes trigger my anxiety. I don't think that's unusual and I've been working on it, but it's there in the background. So tonight was one of those times. We had plans to go to a bar because there was an event happening that I was really interested in. He agreed to go with me, but then he realized he'd forgotten he'd already made plans with his guy friend. I told him not to worry about it. I didn't want to guilt him into choosing and said we'd hang out this weekend instead. Honestly, I thought that was that. Then, later in the evening, I get a text from him saying he's going to a concert. And not just with his guy friend, but with a girl. Not just any girl, but apparently someone he dated for about a month. Here's the kicker. He has never mentioned this girl to me before. He won't even say her name, just keeps referring to her as this girl I know or an internet friend. The only other time he avoided giving me someone's name was months ago, when he went to a concert with a girl he knew from high school. At the time, I didn't question it, but now with this happening again, it feels like a pattern. What makes it worse is that normally, he always tells me who he's going out with by name. He'll casually say, "I'm grabbing dinner with Mike," or "I'm hanging out with Tom." No problem. But when it comes to women, suddenly it's vague and evasive.
Why?
Why hide their names? Why hide the fact that he even dated one of them? The secrecy itself feels worse than the actual action. And of course, my brain immediately goes into overdrive. Why didn't he just tell me up front? Why would he hide her name unless he knew it would upset me? How many other internet friends or girls I know are out there? And why, of all things, does he cancel plans with me, something I was genuinely excited about, only to turn around and go to a concert with someone he once dated? So, here's where it gets complicated. My boyfriend has a ton of female friends, like genuinely a lot. And that's never been an issue for me. I've met most of them, I know who they are, and I know the nature of his friendships with them. I don't monitor him, I don't go through his phone, and I don't freak out when he goes out with them because I genuinely believe men and women can be friends without it being romantic or physical. That's not just me trying to convince myself, either. I live by that belief. I have male friends myself. In fact, one of my best friends is someone I briefly dated 5 years ago. Another is a guy I dated for about a month, who's even come to visit and stay with me. From the very beginning of my relationship with my boyfriend, I was upfront about this. I told him about those friendships, about the little bit of history, and I made sure to ask if he was comfortable. I would check in before my male friend visited or stayed over, just to make sure it didn't cross a boundary for him. He's always been super relaxed about it, no jealousy, no weirdness. And honestly, that's one of the things I love about him. He trusts me and I trust him, or at least, that's how I want it to be. So when this situation came up, it wasn't about the fact that he was with a female friend. That in itself didn't bother me. What unsettled me was that this girl was someone he once dated, and not only had he never mentioned her before, but he actively avoided saying her name. That secrecy felt unnecessary. And it hit a nerve because I've always tried to be transparent about my past with the men in my life. So, why couldn't he extend the same courtesy? When he texted me from the car on the way to the concert, he asked if I was uncomfortable. I was honest and told him I was a bit, but only because she had never come up before. And then he asked me the kind of question that feels like a trap. Be honest with me. If this is going to turn into a discussion tomorrow, I'd rather just leave the concert now. And in that moment, I felt completely stuck. Because no matter how I responded, it felt like I was going to lose. If I said yes, I was uncomfortable and wanted to talk more, then I'd be the reason he left the concert, and he'd resent me for ruining his night. If I said no, and waited until tomorrow to bring it up, then he'd be upset that I hadn't been fully honest in the moment. It was like there was no winning answer. The truth was, I didn't want him to leave. I didn't want him to resent me, and I didn't want to come across as controlling. I didn't want to be the jealous girlfriend who ruined his fun because she couldn't handle him being around another woman. That's not who I am, and it's not who I want to be in this relationship. What I wanted, what I still want, is just a conversation. A chance to understand the nature of this friendship, to know why I hadn't heard about her before, and to be reassured that there's nothing there I need to be worried about. That's it. So instead of pushing, I told him to have fun. I said it plainly, even though there was a lump in my throat, and then I set my phone down for a while. He was literally in the car with her when he was texting me, and the last thing I wanted was for him to feel pressured or cornered in that moment. I thought it would be better to take a step back, gather my own thoughts, and revisit the conversation later when it wasn't so charged. But as much as I tried to keep calm, I couldn't shake this gnawing unease. Because underneath all of this, there's this persistent question. If everything is so innocent, why keep her a secret until now? Why refuse to say her name when he says everyone else's so casually? Why frame it as this girl I know, instead of just being open? A couple of hours later, my phone started blowing up with messages from him. At first, I didn't know what to expect. Part of me thought maybe he'd just send a quick check-in, but instead, it was this long stream of texts. He told me how he'd actually talked to her about my anxiety, and that apparently her boyfriend was also uncomfortable with the situation. He said she understood, that it was normal for me to feel that way, and then he started going on about how he'd told her how much he loves me, how we're moving in together, how committed he is to us. But instead of reassuring me, all I could feel was this wave of anger and disgust. The audacity of him to talk to her about my feelings, about my anxiety, like it was some group project they could workshop together. The thought of them in the car or at the concert, talking about me and my emotions, like I was this insecure little problem he had to manage, made me feel sick. And honestly betrayed. My anxieties and my boundaries should be between him and me, not some girl he used to sleep with. Then the text kept coming. He told me he was going to leave the concert, that he couldn't enjoy himself knowing I was upset, and that he'd rather just come home. And here I was again, shoved into that same impossible position. I didn't want him to leave. I didn't want to be the reason he threw away plans. But I also didn't want to just swallow my feelings and pretend everything was fine. So I sat down and spelled it out for him as clearly as I could. I texted, "To be honest, you put me in a really weird position. That's what's odd to me. You say this girl I know, and won't say who it is. You always say your friends' names, but suddenly you avoid hers. Plus, I thought you were going to hang with guy friend tonight, which is fine, I didn't care, but instead, you're at a concert with some old flame I never even knew existed. And then you act like it's weird that I think the secrecy is, well, weird. Because it is." I paused, staring at the words on my screen before hitting send, but I wasn't done. I needed him to understand the bigger picture, the part that had been gnawing at me since the beginning of the night. And then on top of all that, you want me to promise you I'm fine, that there won't be a discussion tomorrow. I couldn't make that promise. Because I had questions, and I was planning on talking to you in person about them. But at the same time, I didn't want you to not have fun, or feel like you couldn't go to the concert. That's why I said to go enjoy yourself. But here's the problem. If I tell you I'm uncomfortable, suddenly I'm the jerk and the controlling girlfriend. If I tell you to go have fun and wait until tomorrow to ask questions, then I'm wrong because I wasn't upfront in the moment. No matter what, I can't win with you. I told him I loved him, and I meant it. I told him I hoped he could see the position he had put me in, how I wasn't trying to control him, how I wasn't trying to ruin his night, how all I wanted was to be able to have an honest conversation tomorrow without it turning into a fight. I wanted him to understand that I wasn't attacking him, I wasn't accusing him, I wasn't trying to dictate his choices. I just wanted to be heard. But before I could even take a breath, he left the concert. And immediately he started going off. His texts and then his voice messages were this rapid-fire mix of guilt-tripping and accusations. He kept saying how he loved that band and now he would never get to see them again, as if I had personally stolen the opportunity from him. He said he knew he shouldn't have gone, like I had cursed the night before it even started. I tried calmly to explain over and over that I didn't want him to leave. I never asked him to leave. I never even hinted that I wanted him to leave. All I said was that I had questions and I wanted to talk about it tomorrow. But he wouldn't let me get a word in. Every time I tried to speak, he would bulldoze over me, throwing out lines that made me feel cornered. So, I guess I need to ask you about going to concerts now, huh? Are we even compatible? You think I'm f***ing her, huh?
Huh.
Just admit it. I guess I'm going to have to ask permission before I hang out with people now. I don't want this drama in my life. It was like he had already written a script in his head where I was the villain, and he was the poor, oppressed boyfriend who just wanted freedom. No matter how I tried to explain that I didn't want him to leave, that I didn't expect him to ask permission, that I wasn't accusing him of sleeping with her, it didn't matter. He was locked into his narrative. And in that narrative, I was the controlling, jealous girlfriend who had ruined his night. Eventually, he explained who she was. He told me he didn't say her name because he has trouble pronouncing it. Which honestly made no sense to me. We were texting. He could have just typed it out. But instead, he chose to be vague and secretive, and now I was supposed to just accept that explanation and move on. Then he added that she's lonely and that he told her she could reach out to him anytime, that he'd be there if she wanted to talk or hang out. Hearing that just made my stomach turn. Because here I was, bending over backwards to not seem controlling, and meanwhile, he was out building this private, emotional connection with someone he used to sleep with, someone I had never even heard of until tonight. And somehow, I was the problem. To top it all off, he said he didn't even want to go to my parents' house this weekend anymore, because it would be weird. Weird how? Because he had created this fight out of nowhere? Because I dare to ask why he was keeping secrets? It felt like every move I made was twisted into something it wasn't, while his choices were painted as innocent, noble, misunderstood. And honestly, by the end of it, I felt insane. Like maybe I really was this jealous, crazy girlfriend who had blown everything out of proportion. But then I replayed the night in my head, step by step. I had been calm. I had told him to go have fun. I had given him space. I had only said I wanted to talk tomorrow. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse, I didn't demand. And yet somehow, here I was being punished, guilt, accused, gaslit, for simply expressing my feelings. That's what stung the most. I wasn't trying to control him. I wasn't trying to stop him from living his life or seeing his friends. I was just trying to be honest about my own emotions, about what made me uncomfortable, and hoping we could talk through it like partners. Instead, I was made to feel like my honesty was a weapon, like my boundaries were chains I was putting on him. And as much as I tried to stay grounded, I couldn't shake the question running through my mind. If this is how he reacts now, flipping the script, shutting me down, making me feel crazy for simply having feelings, how is this going to work when we're living together? What should I do in a situation like this? I mean, every boy have female friends, but you cannot be hanging out every time with females only after you have a girlfriend who see her future with you. Now I feel torn. I don't think I was controlling. I just wanted to talk later about why he hid this girl's name and why he suddenly changed plans to go to a concert with someone he used to sleep with. Instead, he flipped it on me, left the show early, and now says I'm dramatic and incompatible with him. Am I overreacting? Was I wrong to feel uneasy about the secrecy? Or is this a red flag I shouldn't ignore? How do I handle this without feeling like the crazy girlfriend?